All right, welcome everyone to another edition of Garden Hour. Thank you all for joining us this evening. We've got two of us tonight, so you get, your usual bug update, and then we also have Graig Reicks with us, who is our Extension Weeds Field Specialist based on campus in Brookings. So now is the time if you have weed questions, especially, lawn issues, garden issues, make sure to throw those in the Q&A, so we can have lots of questions for Greg. And for those of you who are maybe new to Zoom or need a quick refresher, please put any questions in the Q&A at the bottom of your screen. Keep an eye on the chat. That's where we'll throw links and other resources, stuff like that. This is being recorded, so the recording will be up on our YouTube playlist for SDSU Extension Garden Hour. And if you've missed any of our previous installments, you can go catch up on those. I know I had a great time listening to the one last week. Some of the stuff that Prairie talked about with the North Dakota garden variety trials, I made sure to bookmark that so that I check it out next year when I'm planning my garden. So with that, Greg, what are you going to be sharing with us this evening?
There. Yeah, I'll be talking mostly about weed control for the late summer and early fall, mostly in lawns. So that'll be the topic of tonight's fun. So looking forward to it.
All right, so yeah, folks, get your weed questions in there, and we will field those to Greg after his segment. Then I'll do my segment. We'll do some more questions and a little bit of a wrap up. So yeah, possibly a short garden hour tonight, although I don't know. I have a feeling we're going to get a lot of questions because I personally have a lot of bindweed, and I'm just at this point, it's a wash. We'll deal with it next year. I don't know. But that is the the weed that is most prevalent in my lawn right now. It's been so hot and dry though that the dandelions have kind of given up on life for a while. But I know you guys out in Brookings have had a lot more moisture, so I'm looking forward to hearing about the fall weed and lawn control. So with that, if you want to go ahead and share your screen, I will let you know. Fingers crossed, everything works the first time.
Hi, everybody. Graig Reicks here. I am the Weed Ecology Field Specialist for SDSU Extension. So I'm going to talk today about late summer and early fall weed control in lawns. So so for August, what are going to be our priorities? Well, our main one is going to be prevent the existing weeds from producing seed. So was a problem this year. We don't want to continue to be a problem or even make worse. So if we can get what's out there under control, maybe control with herbicides, mowing, hand weeding, whatever it takes to stop, this year's weeds from producing seed, that would be a good thing. So if there's too many, then we may have to resort to using herbicides instead of doing hand pulling or mowing. So too many weeds can choke out your lawn. So we don't want to make the problem worse by killing more lawn, which leaves more bare spots for more weeds next year. So should also in August be worth starting to reseed the thin areas because now we're getting to a point where the most stressful time of the summer, heat wise, is generally over. Days are getting a little shorter and it's not getting quite so hot usually. So it's a good time to start reseeding some of those thin areas to prevent weeds from growing in the future. So also keep lawns watered, not excessively, but we don't want the lawn to go dead and dormant because that's where we get weeds to grow. Just less competition means more room for weeds that are more drought resistant than your lawn typically. So slide here to here. Okay, so there we go. Here's some common annual broadleaf weeds that you've probably been seeing, especially like along sidewalks. Prostrate knotweed, prostrate spurge. The spurge is one when I break the stem open, like a white sappy substance that kind of comes out. Black medic is another one. So these are all, controlled by a broad spectrum herbicide. When I say broad spectrum, it's just something that you can go into Walmart or Lowe's, Menards, wherever you get your stuff and get something right off the shelf. It's got a lot of different herbicides in it, just kind of designed to go after most of the weed species that you might find in a lawn. So you should be able to take care of these three with those types of herbicides. So another one we're seeing a lot of this time is both large and smooth crabgrass. Okay, there we go. So this is an annual weed, just like the ones I talked about on the previous slide. So it comes back it produces seed, and seed regrows new weeds every year. So right now I noticed the stuff in my yard was just starting to produce seed heads. So maybe time to start turning my attention to getting some herbicides on this stuff. So this is one of those weeds, you could keep mowing it, but it's going to outsmart you, and it's going to produce seed below the height of the mower blade. So getting it under control soon would be a good thing. So you're going to want to look for a product containing the active ingredient known as quinclorac for your crabgrasses. So here's some patches of crabgrass that right outside the building I work in here at SDSU that, they're a noticeably lighter green color typically than the rest of the lawn. Up close here, it's a lighter green than the rest of the lawn, but right adjacent to it. So the biggest thing, I've gotten a lot of emails from people thinking they have crabgrass, but it's actually quackgrass. So quackgrass is distinguished from crabgrass. The quackgrass has clasping auricles around the stem. So that gets a little confusing. You think claws, auricles, crabs, but no, it's actually quackgrass as the clasping auricles. So it's similar to lawn in that it's a perennial grass. So I'm going to go back up crabgrass. So that has more of a ligule. It's a membranous sheath coming right out where the leaf meets the stem. So if you have that ligule, you have crabgrass. That's an annual weed. You can control it with herbicides. Quackgrass, perennial weed. The only option is glyphosate, which unfortunately kills your lawn as well. So, but you can live with quackgrass, or you can kill off an area that's infested with it and just reseed the lawn and start over. It's probably, if you got a small patch, this stuff can spread pretty quickly. So get that under control. It's better off having to kill off a 10-foot by 20-foot patch, for example, than to have to kill your whole entire lawn 5 to 6 years from now or whatever it is. So you get that one under control before it spreads even further. Even if you had to do some reseeding, you'll probably find that worthwhile down the road. So moving on, early fall, a month, 6 weeks from now, whatever it is. So this is the time to address the perennial weeds. So I had talked about annual weeds there on the previous few slides. So the perennial ones, we need to kill the roots to kill those types of weed. Can't just kill the leaves and stems and above ground foliage. We got to get to the root of the problem, so to speak. And mowing and hand pulling is probably not going to be enough with these types of weeds. So herbicides work best when the weed is sending its resources to the roots for winter, which is early fall. So if we make an application somewhere around the 1st of October, it could be a week or sooner than that, a week after that, whatever it is. We just want to make sure that we have several days with highs over 60 degrees Fahrenheit and lows over 40 degrees Fahrenheit. We want to make sure we have several days before the herbicide application and after the herbicide application as well. So find that sweet spot. If you can get a week before, a week after, where we get some really pleasant weather, that would be good. So, and also make sure that there's adequate moisture in the soil at this time. So if you have to go water your lawn or that area, before we make the application to get adequate moisture in the soil, that would probably be in your best interest. So the types of herbicides we're using for these early fall applications are synthetic auxin herbicides. So 2,4-D, dicamba, quinclorac would fall into that group. So most of the herbicides are the herbicides you see on the shelves, like at Walmart, Lowe's, wherever. That's going to be primarily what's in those herbicides, or these synthetic auxins, and they basically grow the weed to death. You might have seen these applied to dandelions. The weed twists and turns and does all kinds of funky stuff till it dies. So for these types of herbicide to work, the weed actually has to be growing. So that's why we say that temperature minimum there. So if it's 35 degrees and bone dry, the weed's probably not going to be doing much. So we want the weed actively doing things so these types of herbicides can work. So here's some perennials that are fairly common. White clover, dandelions, and these can both be regarded as good weed or not as weeds too, depending on how, if you're a person who likes pollinators, these could be regarded as a good thing. But if you see them as a weed, then it's time to start thinking about controlling these in early fall. Some other ones are creeping bellflower. I honestly, before I started this job, never really paid much attention to this one till I got an email from somebody, and now every time I'm on a walk or something, I'm seeing this all over the place, kind of almost unaware of this one till I started this job, but there's quite a bit of it out there. Field bindweed's another one. I think Amanda said she's might be asking me some questions about this one, so hopefully I studied up enough for her. This one's starting to flower right now. I took a picture of this right here outside my building the other day. So this one can be a tough one. It usually requires multiple herbicide applications. Might take a few years to get that one under control, but yeah, that one, it's a vining weed with kind of the long, skinny leaves that almost kind of look like little spears, I guess you could say. So almost kind of look like the spades, like on a deck of cards, the suit spades. That's kind of what the leaf looks like a little bit. But so here's a typical broad spectrum herbicide, like what I go buy at Walmart, Lowe's, wherever. So they would have these synthetic auxins in them. Usually it usually has 2 or 3 of them. So that's in red here. And those are systemic, so they move throughout the plant, including to the roots. And they work really slow. It causes a slow death to the plant. They aren't going to have the weed dead in 2 days by any means. You're probably looking at 10 days or so. Sometimes they can contain another product called active ingredient, called sulfentrazone. Sulfentrazone is a PPO inhibitor, meaning it's not systemic. It, wherever the spray lands on the leaf, that's where it stays. It doesn't move throughout the plant, but it quickly burns what it comes in contact with. So it kind of turns the foliage brown. So that's important because sometimes, in the spring, for example, when you're spraying dandelions, a lot of times you're making that application when the dandelion is, maybe 5 days away from producing viable seeds. So we don't want to have a herbicide that takes 2 weeks to work when we're 5 days away from producing viable seeds. So that's important a lot of times to have that sulfentrazone or whatever PPO inhibitor they're putting in the mix, to have that in there for lots of situations, so we can get some quick action on the above ground foliage that exists, and then these other 3 can take care of the rest of the plant in a more in a slower manner, but they'll eventually get it taken down. So here are just some of the lawn herbicides you see on the store shelves. There's kind of the big 3 companies. Got Ortho right here. So it looks like, the one they have here, the orange cap has quinclorac. The quinclorac, as you remember, that's the one that'll get crabgrass. So that one, it'll say right on there. A lot of times that one has a little picture of crabgrass, where the yellow one does not. Think have Spectricide, that's another one. This one actually says right on the label, weed stop for lawns plus crabgrass killer. So this one does not. Their other one that doesn't have the quinclorac, the yellow one. And another one is Roundup. So this one actually has a different active ingredient. It's not quinclorac. I think it's topramazone it's called, but yeah, it says right on there, crabgrass destroyer. This one does not. So anything you're going to put on your lawn, make sure it says right on the label for lawns, lawns, lawn weed, lawns. So don't one of these. These ones that say weed and grass killer, these will kill your lawn. So you'll get confused, or you'll have a nice little surprise 5-7 days after whatever you make that application. So weed and grass killers they're a no-no. Save those for weeds in like sidewalk cracks, or maybe gravel driveways, or just areas that don't have vegetation. So places you just want to keep bare ground. There's another product, one more I'm going to talk about, is triclopyr. It's an active ingredient. This weed begone chickweed clover oxalis killer, for example, would contain this stuff. So there's a few weeds that really don't die very easily with some of the more conventional products off the shelf at Walmart, Lowe's, wherever. So one of them is yellow wood sorrel. I got a lot of this stuff in my lawn right now. I have some kids too who I was able to get them to pull it, so I didn't need to apply any of that. So, But anyway, most of the other herbicides are pretty weak on this species. So the triclopyr active ingredient is a pretty good one for this. So the seed is maturing right now, like the stuff in my yard. You know, the pods are starting to turn yellow. I don't think I'd want to rely on herbicide at this point, because my guess is this would probably go to seed and produce more yellow wood sorrel next year. Another ones, should say another couple ones here, ground ivy, which is also called creeping Charlie, and wild violet as well. Triclopyr is about the best thing and one of the only things that work on these types of weeds. So these are perennials. So these are ones you're going to want to get, you know, maybe late September, early October. Whereas the wood sorrel, that one's an annual. Sometimes they classify it as a weak perennial, but that's one you got to get now and probably should have gotten a week or 2 weeks ago, whatever it was. So moving on now, I'm going to talk about actual spraying, methods and techniques. So really, spraying is broadly classified in as either spot spraying or broadcast spraying. So if I got patches of a weed or just weeds scattered throughout the lawn, that's a situation I could be doing spot spraying. I don't have to I can just go around, shoot individual weeds, and that's just fine. Usually works pretty well in the spring when you're doing dandelions, because you see a nice yellow flower to show you where a weed is at. But broadcast spraying, for example, if I want to spray dandelions in the fall and I don't, have a nice yellow flower to show me where all the weeds are at, that's a situation where I'd probably want to look at broadcast spraying. I just want to cover every square foot of my yard and make sure I have the same amount of rate of spray everywhere in the yard to get those weeds prevent them from coming up next spring. So this type of sprayer for broadcast spraying is a toe behind sprayer, pull behind, whatever you want to call it. They're very efficient. You only have to go over your yard once and you're done. You do need to calibrate these things. That's kind of one of the drawbacks. So you need to go out with some water and just test it and see how much spray it takes to cover your yard at a given speed and a given spray pressure. So if I'm going 3 miles an hour with my lawnmower and have 30 psi spray water coming out, I need to see how much spray that takes to cover my lawn. That's a critical piece of information before you start spraying. These things can be a little more expensive than some people want to spend. You're probably looking at maybe close to $1,000 for one of these. You need a lawnmower, lawn tractor, garden tractor, whatever to pull it. You need space to store it as well. And obviously it's a machine, so it's going to probably need some repairs and maintenance from time to time. So for those who don't want to commit to anything like that, there's, non-motorized sprayers, ones that you don't drive. So you got some options there. You got a simple hand pump, which this is probably under $20. You can also spot spray with that hand pump. They make battery ones now, a little bit of a step up for, say $100 to $300, depending on, how nice you want to go. So these deliver a constant stream of spray where you aren't having to pump it all the time. You're getting the same rate the whole time too. That's another plus, because of those hand pump ones, you start to lose pressure after a while, and then your rate's lower, and then you got to pump it again, and then you lose pressure. You go through that whole cycle for the whole application period. So, and then there's hose end sprayers, which you screw onto the end of a garden hose. So for those that are close to a water source, that might be something to consider as well. So all of these types of applications will require you to grid out the area to be sprayed. So, it might tell you on the product label that you buy, it might say apply 1 gallon of spray mixture to 500 square feet. So you got to figure out, what do I want to do? How do I want to break my yard up into 500 square foot cells? So you could do 20 by 25, 15 by 33, 10 by 50, whatever you want to do. So be as creative as you want. And you have to evenly cover each square with the spray mixture. So the 1 gallon of spray mixture, and that mixture, it'll tell you on the herbicide label how much to put in that 1 gallon. It might be 2 ounces of herbicide, 4 ounces, whatever it is. So then you evenly apply it over the area that they stated on the label, 500 square feet, 1,000, whatever they tell you. So the hose end sprayers, a little more about those. The user, there's a dial on there. The user sets the amount of product to be applied according to a label. So if it says 2 ounces, you set the dial to 2 ounces, and the hose will deliver for every gallon of water that comes out the hose, it will deliver 2 ounces of the product with it. So you don't have to mix this with any water. So no water. You can kind of see the brown colored product in the cup there, whatever that you want to call, container, whatever you want to call that attachment. So it'll deliver whatever amount you dial in with 1 gallon of water, 2 ounces per gallon of water, 4 ounces per gallon, whatever you want. And you try to spread that gallon of water as evenly as possible over one of those cells you have in your yard that you gridded out. So there's no mixing necessary. You can pour the unused product back into the container, and it won't contaminate your garden hose either. So there's really no backwash into that hose. So sounds like a pretty good way to go for those who have a water source right there on site. So talk just a little more about labels now. So the information you need to make applications, you look on the front of the label, it'll tell you, what types of active ingredients are in that product, the percentage of each. So 2,4-D, this one is 2,4-D, mecoprop, and dicamba. So it does not have that sulfentrazone in it that burns the plant quickly. So you may not need that. So if you're making a fall application to dandelions where there's nearly no threat of the plant flowering soon, where you need to burn it quickly, then this was probably the right product for you. So tells you, don't use it when it's over 90 degrees. It's mostly probably because that dicamba in there. Get up and move when it's hot, and move on to undesirable places like trees and flowers and places where you don't want dicamba. You look at the directions here, it tells you, all the kind of things you need to follow. So, just for safety and for safety of your lawn as well. For a lot of times it tells you what protection you need to wear. Usually most of these products are pretty safe products. They just have caution labels, which is the same label that's on household cleaners, really. So you might, just a pair of rubber boots and a pair of disposable gloves is probably enough. You don't need to be, full on spray suit type of respirator with these types of products that you do with more concentrated products. Let's see, it's not moving here. There we go. So here it tells you which types of turf. You got to be careful of that sometimes, because some products will injure certain turf grass species, but Kentucky bluegrass, ryegrass, tall fescues, fine fescues should be good. So here it tells you the recipe: add 2 ounces per gallon of water for every 500 square feet. So if you have one of those hose attached sprayers, set your dial for 2 ounces and spray that over 500 square feet, and then move on to the next 500 square feet. So, and it also tells you here you're limited to 2 applications per year. So allow at least 30 days between applications. So maximum rate 8 ounces per 1,000 square feet per year. So just some final thoughts here. Whether a plant and the weed is often a subjective term. I think there's many plants that we all agree on that are weeds, such as leafy spurge, but other things such as dandelions, white clover, other species, pollinator species, you may see them as beneficial. Maybe your neighbors do not. So just gotta, all of everybody just kind of work together. And if they don't want dandelion seed spreading, just, gotta maybe take that consideration and have some different types of pollinators that other than dandelions. So herbicides are an important weed management tool, but we shouldn't rely solely on them. So it's good for wiping the slate clean, herbicides, don't get me wrong, but then we can kind of start over and fix the mistakes that we had made earlier, such as maybe your lawn had too many thin spots, or, too much compaction, or whatever. Maybe I was mowing too short and which allows more weeds to grow. Maybe I need to mow at 3 inches and water more often, add a little more fertilizer just to keep my lawn more lush to prevent weeds from attacking in the first place. So that should conclude my presentation.
We have so many questions.
Sounds like there's a lot of questions there.
There's a lot of questions.
And I do reply to emails too. If I can't answer off the top of my head, I am moving over from, been in corn and soybeans for 18 years, so lawns it's a little bit new to me. So yeah, if not, if I can't answer it, just send me an email and I'll gladly look it up and promptly get back to you on it. So you can call my number as well. I love hearing from you. So yeah, thank you very much.
All right, so the first question was not a plant. Somebody else had a question about how to control bindweed in a lawn, and I know you threw together an article about that, I feel like.
I hadn't done bindweed yet, but it's
Okay.
definitely on my radar. So
Okay,
that's
maybe I
probably
just
my next
imagined
one.
it.
I think there was one at one time, like from 2022, Garrett Schaefer maybe wrote. So yeah, so bindweed, it's persistent. Most of the dicambas, 2,4-Ds, quinclorac, the stuff you get off the shelf will work on it. The synthetic auxins, the ones that essentially grow the plant to death. But it's going to require, if you can get it in the fall, that's really good, like late September, early October. But you don't want it going to seed either. So you got just keep an eye on it. I know the stuff around here is flowering right now. I'm not sure exactly when that'll go to seed, but it's probably within the next few weeks, maybe. So you can mow it to keep, to the flowers that are there. If possible, you can mow it to help reduce that or delay that a little bit. If we can delay that herbicide application a little longer to get closer to fall with it, but we don't want it going to seed. So we could apply something. We might be able to apply something twice because as we were looking at that label towards the end of the presentation, 30 days apart, the applications needed to be for that one particular product. So if we did something in mid-August and then in September again, that might work all right. So let's see, where are the questions?
I was gonna say,
I don't see the questions, I guess.
oh yeah, no, I'm
Yeah.
closing them
Are
as
you?
we
Oh, okay.
go over them. Yeah, no,
Gotcha.
don't you don't have to worry about the Q&A. I've
Okay.
got that back end of it handled. Yeah, I also find that like pulling out the bindweed is like really satisfying if it's like just grown over something. It's like you find the one stem and you're like, oh, I've done so much with so little effort.
And what you don't see, there's a lot of roots there because it is a
Yeah.
perennial. It's not an annual. So yeah, I know like yeah, pulling weeds can sometimes be really, yeah, a lot of good stress relief or pleasurable, whatever. But yeah, that's the bindweed, that's a tough one because the
Yeah,
root
I guess
system's so extensive below the ground. And
yeah.
yeah, it's
I
the
guess I didn't realize
herbicides.
that that one was a perennial. I don't
Mhm.
know why I thought it was an annual, but I learned something new about weeds tonight.
Yeah.
So one thing that comes up a bunch is the common name creeping Jenny. So
Hmm.
in South Dakota, what does creeping Jenny refer to? Or what could it refer to? And why do
It,
we want people to send us pictures of their weeds versus telling us they have creeping Jenny?
well, I've seen it either be field bindweed or wild weed based on pictures people have sent me. So I think it's just kind of a catch-all term for any weed that has vines to it. So, but yeah, I'll try to, give it the proper diagnosis or proper name. So if people send a weed, so yeah, because like wild buckwheat's an annual, and maybe that's when you're thinking of when you said you thought the bindweed was an annual. They look pretty similar.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, common names can be real tricky. So we've got a question from the Deadwood area. They have an
Mhm.
explosion of mullein. Will they die down when it's dry, or do they need to spray?
Oh boy, I've never had that one before. They could send me an email on that. Yeah, that's one. That's kind of a new one for me. But
Okay, all
I
right,
know the
Julie.
weed. I know mullein, but yeah, that's.
Yeah,
Mhm.
that send send Greg an email on that one.
Send me an
Um,
email.
let's see, a question about, so here's another one from the Black Hills. We might need just a
Okay.
bunch of emails from the Black Hills because they have been spraying St. John's wort. Some of the plants have flowers. Will the seeds still be viable after they've sprayed?
And that's another good one. But if they flowered, you probably are okay. I can do some more looking on that one, but I wouldn't wait too much longer. So And if you spray something that's got some burn to it as well, like with some sulfentrazone, that would probably be a good thing as opposed to spraying a slower working herbicide that takes, a couple weeks to kill the plant, because that just gives that more opportunity to produce seed. So if you could do something that, has a combination of active ingredients, something that has where you can get that burn plus the systemic activity to get the roots, like your synthetic auxins. So just a combination product. So yeah.
So this one is about thistle. They have
All right.
thistle in a perennial garden. Is there Are there spray options? And if so, when would you apply those?
Yeah, that's going to be tough because your perennial garden's going to have broadleaf plants as well. So, a possibility is maybe a directed spray you could use, where if you can possibly just get it onto the leaves of the thistle without getting it on the other plants. And that's another one, it's a perennial, so you're going to want to go. I mean, I'm sure the thistles produce seed by now. Usually that's more of a early July thing. So if you're willing to cut it down, if you can mow it, it'll start to regrow a bit in the fall, and then you could somehow, if you could just dribble some spray onto that regrowth, and because those are systemic herbicides, they will travel throughout the plant. So if you just get some on it, that's what I would try anyway. If you can just kind of avoid, getting, or if you could, wipe it on with a paintbrush or something, just avoid getting it on your perennial plants in your garden. That's the route I would try. And maybe
Yeah.
aim for late September on that one. Try to get it mowed to make the weeds smaller, because smaller weeds die better with herbicides than, waist high or chest high weeds, whatever they are.
Same kind of philosophy as with trying to kill insects with insecticides. Easier to
The
kill when they're
smaller,
small. When it's a full-size grasshopper, it's like, ugh.
yep.
So we have somebody who is slowly transitioning their lawn to micro clover, but some of the seed washed into their native flower bed. Any options other than hand pulling, which they found very challenging?
Ooh, so yeah, it's a flower bed. That's another tough one. I don't know if they can possibly target a herbicide to just get a little bit on those clover.
Hmm.
Because yeah, you're in your flower bed, it's broadleaf weeds or plants, excuse me, plants as well. And yeah, it's kind of gets hard to select for, yeah, to kill those broadleafs amongst other broadleafs. So that's
Yeah, I
what
know
I would try anyway. So
some of the pictures of like, oh, the violet. I'm like, I let the violets live. I have a very different definition of what is a weed. Okay, we have a question about, can you use black tarps to heat kill quackgrass?
okay, quackgrass. I have never heard of that before, so it's not saying it's not possible, but yeah, and they're talking about within a lawn, right? I'm guessing.
I'm guessing
Or
so.
yeah, I yeah, yet to hear that one. I mean, quackgrass, yeah, you can. It's just, yeah, the toughest part is you just might have to start over. And I mean, I have it in my lawn as well, and I'm just kind of living with it right now. And I got some patches though that I'm kind of wondering, well, I should maybe, yeah, there's starting to look like there's more quackgrass than grass. It might just be time to wipe those out. And it's just kind of the lawn that I inherited when I bought my house. And just sometimes it's hard to, yeah, it's really if there's a little bit of quackgrass, people have just, I've read painted it on to individual
Mhm.
blades, but I know like my lawn's probably got 50,000 blades, so that's probably not going to happen. So yeah,
Yeah, you kind
if
of
you
like, as you were presenting about the quackgrass and the crabgrass, it's like, why do we just not like them as lawn grasses because they're too wide? Are they just not like fine enough? Like,
That's part of it. And the other problem is they grow quicker. So when you mow,
mm,
like 2 days later, your quack grass is like 2 inches taller than the rest of the lawn. So it's just yeah, they don't grow in unison. That's another problem. They're just, I don't know, just kind of an eyesore, I guess. It depends on who you, not maybe not to everybody, but a lot of people. So
yeah, because honestly, if there's a grass that can handle the pure conditions,
That's one,
I'd,
yeah,
I'd be
they
like,
should
yeah,
just
go for
grow
it.
entirely quackgrass lawns out there. But yeah, but it's one of those deals. If your lawn is thick and well maintained, it's quackgrass is one you're probably not going to see a whole lot of. It thrives in thin lawns where it can, because it spreads underground through those roots. They're like spaghetti strings. If you ever dig some of it up, it just looks like spaghetti underground, and those can grow. It's like 300 feet per year. It's a ridiculous rate, and then they just pop up new plants all over the place where lawn is thin. So, yeah, but I've never heard of the black tarp doing anything. That probably wouldn't be good for the lawn though either, I wouldn't think.
Yeah, I was
So,
gonna say solarization
yeah.
will kill. It's a non-selective method.
Hmm.
So, and it might, I mean, it's real low toxicity, so you can definitely experiment, and it might be one of those things where you have to leave it on for a decent amount of time for it to be hot enough, long enough to kill not only the plant material, but also things that are in the seed bed. But yeah, that would be one for Greg to maybe like, poke around and see if anyone's done any research on that. Because there's been studies of solarization for other things. Um, but yeah, keeping in the quackgrass theme, when you're killing it, how large of an area around it do you have to kill also? Like, is there a buffer zone that you should nuke as well?
It probably won't hurt. That's a good question. It might not hurt to go a little bit outside of it, but yeah, it's mainly, yeah, I guess just, yeah, you don't want to do too much though either, where you have to
Yeah.
um have to reseed more lawn. So yeah, I might go a few feet, but yeah, so yeah, it's something I haven't tried yet. So
So with going back to the thistles, is glyphosate effective against thistles?
it can be the best thing for thistles is probably going to actually be stinger. So 2,4-D and dicamba can be good. You just might have to apply it a few more times. Stinger a lot of times is one shot and it can usually get them, but those types of like 2,4-D dicamba, you might have to, go fall and spring both. So, and glyphosate, it's, yeah, the 2,4-D and dicamba, I believe, are better for thistle control. Usually people just, they have it in grasses like in pastures, so they kind of avoid glyphosate because they don't want to kill the desirable plants around it. But I think it's not the best product, but I think it can have some activity on it.
And then the current final question, can you use quinclorac to eliminate crabgrass in the lawn without killing the grass?
That's correct. Yep.
Okay.
So that one, yep, that's, yeah, quinclorac's not gonna kill your grass as long as you don't apply. I mean, if you apply too much of it, it could hurt it a little bit, but yeah, that's the beauty of quinclorac. So crabgrass. And the other one was that topramazone, which that was showed a picture of it, Roundup, crabgrass eliminator, or whatever they call that stuff. That was a little different active ingredient, but it's still kind of the same concept, a product you can apply in grass without killing grass. So
All right. I have learned so many things about weeds and about why the bindweed just keeps getting worse every year because apparently it's a perennial.
yep, that explains
So
it. So
yeah, I've got some things to do this fall. Apologies to my neighbors. But the violets and the dandelions do get to stay. Okay, with that, we'll swap shares here and I will throw up some insect pictures. So let's see. And if anybody thinks of additional weeds questions while I'm talking, feel free to throw those in the Q&A, and if we have time at the end, we will get to them. But I did want to show off some cicada killer photos because I went back to McCrory Gardens last week before the specialty crop field day, which was a lot of fun until a really bad thunderstorm blew up and we had to rush out of the field before we all got struck by lightning. But if you are in the Brookings area and go to McCrory Gardens, the Perennial garden area has quite a few cicada killers, which I talked about before. And they have decided that that sort of like center fountain area is a great place to have a couple of their nests. However, they don't quite realize that they haven't been able to fit the cicadas in between the bricks. So you can kind of see the clumps of soil that are present there from where they've been sort of excavating, and then just a whole bunch of paralyzed cicadas all over the bricks, which is great for some of the scavenger insects, like some of the ants and other things that will sort of carry off other dead bugs and use them. But it was super cool. I mean, I got to see a cicada killer actually like attacking a cicada up close, which was really neat. But I just found it kind of funny that the cicada killers did not pick like the best spot for their nests and couldn't get their cicadas, the food source for their larvae, in between those bricks. So that was kind of a little interesting insect safari observation. And then in my backyard, usually every year I see one or two ambush bugs and they like to hang out on the sunflowers in my yard. But these are a little generalist predator. They are one of our assassin bugs, so they're in that same sort of family. And I don't know if you can see it on this picture because he does camouflage in decently well, but there is an adorable little ambush bug in kind of the center right of the middle of this sunflower. You can see it's got sort of like a horizontal stripe across its abdomen, which kind of makes it stand out a little bit, but color-wise, they're kind of that brown, they've got that sort of greenish yellow, and they really blend into a lot of different flower colors. They have raptorial forelegs, so they've got the front legs kind of like a praying mantis does, where they're kind of thickened and look like they're good at catching things, which they are. So, yeah, they will eat whatever they catch that comes to the flower. And I just think that they're a really interesting little natural enemy that shows up at about this point in the summer. So, as you're checking out your flowers and just, observing different garden plants, maybe keep an eye out around the petal area for the ambush bugs. Also at McCrory Gardens, I was looking at the cup plants because usually the cup plants have a bunch of these red aphids on them, and the cup plants did not have aphids this year. And then I happened to take a closer look at one of the sunflower species that was in the perennial garden, and it was just loaded with these delightful aphids. They are one of the larger species, and I totally should have looked up what species they are because aphids tend to be really host specific. But they were all over. I saw one stem of them and then I kept looking around and I was seeing more of them. I was also looking to see if there were any natural enemies that were in there, if there were any, parasitized ones, and there wasn't a ton of natural enemy activity, which wasn't great, but aphids really are, the plankton of the garden. They are a food source for a lot of things, our lady beetles, our syrphids, our lacewings, and yeah, they tend to be most prevalent on the growing points of plants. They do like sort of the young, tender areas of the plants, but these colonies were just absolutely fantastic. You could see how everybody was just like lined up and they were all feeding. So if you do see aphids and you notice their antenna, if their antenna are back over their bodies, it actually means that they have settled down to feed. If their antenna are sort of to the front and kind of moving around more, they're still like probing for a good place to settle down. So these aphids were pretty cool. And if I like shook the stem a little bit, they would all sort of like start to wiggle and like yell at each other in their little aphid language. So yeah, I find aphids fascinating. I know a lot of people are trying to get them out of their gardens, but natural enemies do a lot of good work keeping these guys in check, and plants can handle some damage. So if you see aphids, it's not, you don't have to burn it down. Also, I think they're pretty cute. So this year, I have had multiple people email me at varying points during the season to ask where are all of the bees. And I don't know that I personally in my backyard have noticed fewer bees. I think still have a solid number of critters, bumbling around, honeybee, bumblebee, or otherwise. But that's also because I have a lot of weeds in my yard and I have a lot of flowers. And a lot of flowers that I just like these sunflowers, they reseed every year and I let some of them stay that are, not sort of in the too much in the way of my sidewalk. So I do have a lot more habitat than the average bear. And I know listening to Robin's presentation from last week about all the different like things that pollinators need plant-wise, like all the different plant signals, flower size, shape, and color. That was really an inspiration to like take another look at some of the perennials I've put in and try to add some more to like increase my bloom times. But yeah, for folks that are concerned about where all the bees are, like I'm glad people are looking out for the bees now. But one thing, the things that we can't control are like what the winter is like, and that really does impact, insect survival. But the things that we can control are adding habitat and reducing insecticide use. So if you have the ability to add more flowering plants, especially perennials that are native to your area of South Dakota, that is absolutely beneficial. Like if you plant it, they will come. And then also, as we're talking about like herbicide control, if you are using insecticides in your yard, you want to be really careful about that, because any that are broad spectrum are going to impact pollinators. They're going to impact bees as well. So I'm stoked that people are looking out for the bees and, hopefully next year, maybe our winter will be a little bit more decent and they'll be able to bounce back faster in the spring. But also, make sure to leave stems, leave some leaf litter, leave the nesting places for the bees. And maybe I know I've got like probably about 2 more weeks of garden hour, plus we'll do some off-season garden hour. So maybe I'll talk some more about some of that habitat on a future show, but um, there's things that you can do to make your yard more hospitable for the bees so that they, show up faster next year and also show up in greater numbers. But on a positive, I did have somebody email asking if the monarchs had started migrating already because they had seen so many in their backyard on the flowers. And it's really awesome that they're seeing so many adult monarchs already. It's too early for the migration, so these monarchs are not heading out. But what it does mean is that we've had some, perhaps some good local reproduction of the monarchs and that we're producing a lot more that will hopefully be, laying eggs, and those caterpillars will be, getting ready to head south in another month or so. So yeah, the monarchs that you're seeing right now, those are the result of the ones that migrated up from Mexico. So we've got sort of our summer population that is reproducing and hanging out, and their offspring are going to be the ones that head to Mexico. But you can also always check out the Journey North maps to kind of see when the migration gets started. And we will be tagging monarchs at Insect Fest. So September 6th, McCrory Gardens. Sydney just sent me the picture of the envelope. The monarch tags showed up today. So we'll be ready to go with fresh tags for the monarchs. And then I was reading an article from the Xerces Society about captive rearing of monarchs. And one of the guidelines that they recommended was that if you're, going to grab a couple caterpillars from your yard from the milkweed that you manage, only rear less than 10 caterpillars per year per family. So if you've got, 3 grandkids, it's like you don't rear 30 caterpillars, still just rear 10. Because one of the things with captive rearing is it artificially inflates how many caterpillars survive. So in the wild, only about 10% or less of caterpillars make it from egg to adult. And that's okay. Like there's a lot of selection pressure out in nature, and, you know, as there should be. Um, so the ones that are captive reared, we're removing that selection pressure from like predators, from disease, and we can kind of mess up populations by like loving the monarch a little bit too hard. So um, you want more monarchs, absolutely plant more milkweed, support the habitat, and support the monarchs that are out there in nature. But it's okay to like rear out a couple that you picked up in your backyard to like show off the life cycle. They can be a really cool learning tool, and they are definitely one of our gateway insects that get people to be like more cool with bugs. So I just thought that was a really interesting article that just came across my desk recently. And then upcoming event-wise, the horticulture building will be open at the State Fair from August 27th to September 1st. And we'll have master gardeners there staffing a table answering questions. And then I know a couple of us from the horticulture team will be there giving talks at various points throughout State Fair. So hopefully we'll have the schedule sort of finalized and be able to share that with you in the coming weeks here on Garden Hour. And then, of course, Insect Fest at McCrory Gardens. Like I said, we'll be tagging monarchs and having all sorts of other activities. So make sure to stop by and see us there. So we are gonna stop sharing and let me double check my questions. Ooh, asters, yellows, and aphids. Oh, so okay, aphids on your red osier bush, and you've got lots of ants. So, fun story, the ants are actually not fixing your aphid problem. The ants are there to farm the aphids. So it is a really cool just thing that happens in nature, but ants will protect aphid colonies and they will take the honeydew that the aphids excrete and use that as a nutrition source. So, um, if the bush is otherwise doing fine, just leave them alone. Like they will kind of work themselves out. You can also always like hit it with a, high pressure spray of water to sort of like knock them off. That's kind of a, you know, low investment, low toxicity way to interrupt some aphids that are feeding. But yeah, the ants are actually not going to eat the aphids. They are eating the honeydew that the aphids are excreting. And some ants have even been observed to like pick up aphids and like move them to a different part of a plant in order to get more yield out of them. So it's super cool. It's a really interesting mutualism, but they are not predators in this situation. And then yeah, so Astor's yellows is, ooh, I want to say it's a phytoplasma, but that is going to be a better question for one of our plant pathologists. So I would highly recommend shooting that one to our garden hotline or to the Ask Extension widget. And I believe we're going to have Cody on perhaps next week. I should double check the schedule, but he is one of our new extension plant pathology field specialists. And that is going to be a great question for him because it's been a while since I've taken plant pathology. The textbook is back there on the bottom of my bookshelf, but I don't want to give you some bad advice about Astor's yellows. So hold that question for probably next week or submit it to the hotline or ask extension, and we'll make sure that Cody answers that. But yeah, otherwise, I think we are caught up on questions. So thank you to everybody who joined us this evening. Thank you, Greg, for teaching us all about weeds. So you talked about all the plants that you've got to, kill in your yard, but is there anything super cool in your garden or yard or that you've just observed on campus that's like a neat plant that you like and enjoy that it's alive?
It's a good question. Caught me off guard on that one. Yeah, I know. I guess I- yeah. Nothing really too jumps off the page. I guess yeah. Coming over from a lot of years in crops, so I gotta
Yeah.
start to get an appreciation for some different types of plants. So I'll get there.
Yeah, I always like hearing about other people's gardens. Right now I've got like a zucchini that's like a monster plant that I've been, grabbing the zucchinis before they get to be too enormous. But yeah, and then my tomatoes are a forest. So plant spacing, who needs it? Uh, but we have 3 more weeks of garden hour. So we will be back next week, August 12th, and then the 19th and the 26th is our last regular season garden hour, which is another great reason to tune in, but also to stop by and see us at the South Dakota State Fair in Huron. But until then, we will sign off for this evening. The clouds outside here in Pierre keep turning funny colors. So we'll see if we get any sort of terrible weather tonight. I just noticed that we were in a tornado watch, so that's fun. So stay safe out there, everyone, and happy gardening.